Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Luis Ortiz will not be facing Anthony Joshua. It has been confirmed on social media. So a statement has been released by King Kong Boxing, which is the advisor, Jay Jimenez, who manages Luis Ortiz. And I've got to say, this is a slightly bizarrely worded statement, and some of it just doesn't really make sense, and some of it doesn't seem credible, but we'll go through it, piece it together, pick it apart, and talk about this, because Luis Ortiz was the fan favourite, at least from what I could tell, to replace Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller, who failed 3 doping tests ahead of what would have been a June 1st fight with Anthony Joshua in New York. Motorbike going past there, we'll just wait for that to go. This is a situation where Luis Ortiz said he wanted the fight. He's been calling to fight Anthony Joshua. He said just a couple of months ago he would fight Anthony Joshua for almost any amount of money. He was gagging for the fight ahead of Miller accepting the fight with Joshua, but now he's done an about-face through his management. Mind you, it's not from Ortiz himself, so who knows what he's really thinking, because I'm reminded of that tweet from Lance Pugmire the other week, see here on screen, just texted with Luis Ortiz, who tells me he could be ready for Anthony Joshua if his manager instructs him to. Don't get the sense from Premier Boxing that they'll allow this. We'll come back to that later on, because some of what's going on now with this not facing Anthony Joshua, maybe promotional ties and issues do have something to do with this, and we'll get to that later, because having a rival event, being successful with one of your top fighters, maybe the PBC and Al Heyman didn't want this, but King Kong Boxing, which is Jay Jimenez, who represents Luis Ortiz, says on social media, it's a no-go for June 1. Sorry guys, we were told to stay as quiet as possible and play possum until fight had been made, because every time someone called Luis out, it would be a gimmick to promote themselves, but it still didn't work. We just received news from promoter that it's a no-go and it was all a gimmick, and Hearn's lowball offer will not be accepted, and no contract even ever got sent. So sorry to all the loyal fans, Luis really wanted this title shot. Hashtag Luis vs Joshua, hashtag Luis Ortiz, hashtag heavyweight, hashtag Southpaw. Now, something about this statement doesn't quite ring true, saying it's a no-go here, they were told to stay as quiet as possible. If you've seen in recent days, any heavyweight with any interest in Anthony Joshua and fighting Joshua for his 3 belts and millions of dollars, because that's what the opportunity would be, has been as vocal as anything. I think we've heard from about 40 or 50 heavyweights who've literally put their hand up and said, yep, I want this fight, give me this fight, I'll snap your hand off to take it. But Luis Ortiz has been one of the more quieter heavyweights, and a lot of fans have been asking, well, what's going on? And I'm sure Eddie Hearn would not have been instructing Luis Ortiz and his team to be quiet here, because no one else within the heavyweight division has been quiet, even if they were instructed to do so. And Luis Ortiz and his management is not beholden to Eddie Hearn. So I just don't know if that sounds credible. One, that they'd been told to be quiet, but this whole thing about it would be a gimmick to promote Joshua. Joshua is the one with the belts here. Luis Ortiz does not have any belts. He's not a mandatory title challenger. This was his opportunity to face Joshua. Remember, he'd said he wanted to face Joshua previously. He'd face him for almost any money. His highest career payday was $500,000 versus Deontay Wilder. He's 40 years old now. This was the golden ticket. So what is really going on here? And this next bit, see, we just received news from promoter that it's a no-go and it was all a gimmick, and Hearn's lowball offers will not be accepted and no contract was ever got sent. Well, if you didn't accept an offer, why would a contract be sent? So, I mean, that part doesn't make sense to begin with, but who said it was a gimmick? And what promoter are they talking about? Because I'm sure Eddie Hearn is not approaching them going, yeah, sorry guys, it was a joke. We never were interested in you. It's all made up. It was just all to promote Anthony Joshua and use Luis Ortiz's name. Anthony Joshua doesn't need to use Luis Ortiz's name, because in the world of heavyweight boxing, Anthony Joshua is the one that is at the top of the division. Luis Ortiz's profile in comparison to Joshua is, he's in his shadow big time. So this whole thing about using his name as a gimmick to promote them, it doesn't stack up. But then saying a promoter, and which promoter did they receive news from? Because Luis Ortiz doesn't have a promoter. Unless they're referring to Al Heyman here, but then that would break some laws in the United States. And if they're truly trying to say that Eddie Hearn was saying that it was a gimmick, I mean, that's just not credible at all, because this was the guy that they wanted the fight against. This was the number one name from Anthony Joshua. They wanted to fight him. So some of this whole thing just doesn't add up at all for me. And it'll be interesting to hear the other side of the story here, because what we're getting here doesn't really make a lot of sense. For a guy who said he wants a title shot, that he would face Anthony Joshua for almost any amount of money, but now saying he's getting lowball offers and that no contract was ever sent. But if you didn't accept any offer, why would you get a contract? But yeah, this doesn't make any sense, and Luis Ortiz has turned down the fight. He doesn't want to fight Anthony Joshua. That much is clear, and it may not actually be Ortiz himself. When I say Luis Ortiz, I'm saying the people who are involved with Ortiz in general. Because I'm sure Ortiz, as a fighter, he would want to actually face Joshua. None of these guys are scared of each other. They will fight each other, but the financials and other aspects have to stack up. And some of that stacking up is promotional issues. And when the name Luis Ortiz was thrown out there, because he is connected with PBC, I wasn't really sure of how makeable this would be. Because DAZN is a competing entity. Anthony Joshua is having his first fight in the United States. It's his first in America fight on DAZN. How vested in this is Al Heyman in making that event a bigger success than it could be if Joshua fights someone, a lesser opponent than Ortiz? There is nothing to be gained for Al Heyman by allowing his fighter Luis Ortiz to face Joshua. So some of this could just be positioning that they're trying to make out and attack Joshua and Hearn to sort of say, oh, well, it was them who didn't want to make the fight. They were lowballing it. They didn't want it. It was a gimmick, all this sort of stuff. Where actually some of it could be because of promotional issues. Ortiz may have been guaranteed a fight with Deontay Wilder for similar money to potentially what he is going to get with Anthony Joshua. There is no benefit for Al Heyman to allow his fighter to go off and make a rival broadcaster's event a success. So I do think promotional issues are coming into play here big time. But it's disappointing news, because from a fan standpoint, all we want to see is the fights. The best fights. But these promotional issues are becoming an issue. The reality of the heavyweight division these days is there are lines drawn between three different entities at the moment in the United States. An emerging entity in DAZN and Eddie Hearn's Matchroom USA. You have the PBC with its broadcasters, Showtime and Fox, and then ESPN and Top Rank have been forging a bit of a new alliance more recently, trying to build their stock in the division. The fighters who are aligned to these different broadcasters, promoters, advisors, however you want to frame it, they may have some limited scope to move and, as it were, cross the street. And that could be the case here with Luis Ortiz, because some of the statement, it's flimsy, it doesn't stack up. And if people want to say Luis Ortiz doesn't want the fight, I can understand why they would. It's probably not necessarily him. It will be his handlers, his advisors. Al Heyman probably doesn't want Ortiz helping out DAZN and making Joshua's first event in the United States a success. When you step back and look at it like that this could make money for DAZN and get them subscribers, why would Al Heyman want to do them a favor and give them a leg up at all? Because it's a ruthless commercial world. He wouldn't. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.